A couple of months ago, my friend's cousin, who was a single mother, bought a new cell phone. After a long day of work, she came home, placed her phone on the counter, and went to watch TV. Her son came to her not too long later and asked if he could play with her new phone. She told him not to call anyone or mess with any of her text messages, and he agreed. Later that night, around 11:20, she was drowsy and decided to tuck her son in and go to bed. She walked into his room and saw that he wasn't there. She then ran over to her room and found him sleeping in her bed with her phone in his hand. Relieved, she picked up the phone and began to inspect it. Browsing through, she noticed only minor changes that her son had made, such as new apps and a new background. But then she opened her picture app. She began deleting the pictures that he had taken, selfies and other various things, until one new picture remained. When she first saw it, she was in disbelief. It was her son, sleeping on her bed, but the picture was taken by someone else, above him. And it showed in the left-hand corner an elderly woman's face. One night, when I was maybe 10 or 12, I had trouble falling asleep. You see, my bedroom was the entire top floor of our home at the time, and my bed and other such materials were on the left side, and the storage and closets were on the right. I was lying in bed when I heard a noise from the other side of the room, and then I saw a rocking horse. It began to rock. It was just sitting outside of the closet doors. It proceeded to rock its way halfway across the room and then stopped dead under the ceiling fan. At this point, I was freaking out and just buried my head under the blankets and never peeked out again until morning. It was all confirmed not to be a dream, as the rocking horse was still in the middle of the room when I woke up. Furthermore, I got a stern reprimand from my parents for being out of bed past my bedtime playing with my toys. Their bedroom was directly below the storage closet area and had heard the creaking of the rocking horse throughout the night. My grandpa told me this story about how one time he was sitting in a chair in front of his home when he heard his wife repeatedly calling him from inside. The thing is, my grandmother passed away a few years before this incident. But he told me that the voice was so pressing that he actually got up to look inside. As soon as he stepped foot into the house, he heard a loud crash from behind him and turned around to see that the chair he had just been sitting in was crushed by the cast iron gutter that fell onto it. If he hadn't come inside the house, he would have probably been seriously injured. I don't know if it's paranormal or not, but every time I think about it, it sends chills down my spine. I was babysitting my niece once while I was staying at my brother's place. They had one of those little baby cameras set up so I could see her on the little TV while I was studying. While I started dozing off, I heard some whispering and realized that it was coming from the monitor. I initially thought it was some feedback or something, but when I looked at the TV, there was a dark shadow near my niece's crib. I had never been more terrified in my life, but the shadow was clearly there where it had not been before. I went to the room and noticed nothing, but I took her out of there. I went back to the TV, and the shadow was clearly gone. I told my brother what happened, and he pulled me aside and told me not to mention it to my sister-in-law because she would freak out. But he had seen that same thing several times and heard the same whispering. They stayed in that house for about 4 more years, just until my niece was able to start speaking. She would mention to her mom about her special friend. To this day, it still scares me. When they move out, my brother told me that my niece had become sad because she would miss her best friend. Her mom would tell her that she could bring him along, but all she would say is that he couldn't leave the house. We have never told her to this day about that shadow, and she apparently never saw it. I don't know what it was called until much later. I was living on the beach in a house that had been there since the early 1920s. In its history, it had been a nursery, an orphanage, and even a place where they smuggled illegal immigrants. One day, my new wife and I were having an argument about something. I honestly can't even remember what it was about, but I do remember she had to walk down the block to get coffee and cool off, and I was left alone in the house. The way the place was built was extremely haphazard. There was a bedroom and living room on one side, and then a bathroom with 2 entrances. On the other side of the bathroom was a hallway that had 2 windows on one side and 2 bedrooms on the other. From my bedroom, I could look across the hall into the bathroom, and then through the bathroom down the other hall. I was standing at my dresser and just noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. And I looked down, and there was, this still gives me goosebumps just saying it, a black figure. It was maybe 3 feet tall, and it was vaguely humanoid. It looked like scribbles, like someone scribbled a human shape, but they moved like electricity. That's honestly the best way I can describe it. There was no sound that I could remember, and I distinctly remember seeing it and not being afraid, just very confused. Then it noticed me looking at it, and I can't say if it did, but it did turn around and focus on me. Then I was scared. I didn't move, didn't scream, nothing. I was just frozen because this thing was coming at me. It rushed down the hall towards me. I had no idea what it intended, but as soon as it entered the bathroom, the door closest to me just slammed shut on it. I screamed, yelled for my wife. She wasn't home. I had to go outside into the daylight and didn't go back in until I saw her return. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't know if what I saw was supernatural, but I know it was something, and I'm not sure of what it was.